Welcome to our 7th and final session of LPI's Reimagining Education series. We hope that the past 6 sessions have helped you to unpack and understand the features of school redesign. Many on this call are closing out the school year, and we hope that once you've had some time to reflect on this past year and to celebrate your successes, you can use what you've learned with us in this series to help you plan for the future. Thank you for being part of this community of people who are committed to providing powerful education for all learners that prepares our graduates for life beyond high school and supports them to think about how to contribute and make improvements to their community and beyond. And happy Educator Appreciation Week to all who are celebrating. Reimagining Education is a 7-part series hosted by our new Center for School and System Redesign. We have worked with our co-sponsors, the UCLA Center for Community Schooling and the John W. Gardner Center for Youth and Their Communities to develop this series, and you'll be hearing from them tonight. We also want to thank the Stewart Foundation for their Youth Thriving Through Learning Fund for their generous support of the center. Redesigning High School's 10 Features for Success is a report published last spring that we're using as the framework for our series. We hope that this report and the research, policy, and practice support that we provide through the center can become a framework that supports schools and districts across the country to reimagine learning environments for young people that reflect what the science of learning and development indicates that they need. Strong supportive relationships with peers and adults, deep, engaging, and appropriately challenging learning, both in the classroom and beyond, reciprocal and authentic relationships with families and the broader community, integrated student supports, and educators who have the preparation and support needed to deliver on student, family, and community needs. We will continue to expand our website and launch our newsletter to point you to critical resources and tools as we work towards being a national hub that convenes, coordinates, and curates school redesign efforts and content. We plan to function as a network of networks by bringing together leaders who are facilitating school transformation and systems change and thinking about the policy agenda that we need to advance these goals. Tonight, we're finishing out our series by thinking about the how of school redesign implementation at the district and school level. We'll begin with a research framing from our partners in Learning Series Co-Design. Then we will move to a moderated panel discussion and Q&A with educators who are undertaking a redesign effort in Anaheim, California. After that, we'll close out our series and share a brief preview of what's next for the center. You'll have an opportunity to reflect on your learning in the middle of this jam-packed agenda, I promise. And we look forward to hearing more about what you are taking away from the series. As a reminder, Redesigning High School's 10 Features for Success is a report co-authored by Linda Darling-Hammond, Matt Alexander, and Laura Hernandez. The Center for School and System Redesign builds on this report, as well as decades of research and connects implementation of the science of learning and development to school transformation. Throughout this series, we provided an overview of all 10 features from the report, explored how to nurture meaningful relationships, how to implement student-centered and culturally responsive pedagogy, how to develop authentic curriculum and assessment, how to engage families and teachers as partners in the decision-making process, and how to prepare and support educators to do this kind of work, which we know is so essential to young people's thriving. Tonight, we will wrap up our series using the lens of community schools to unpack what schools and districts can do to implement shared leadership and decision-making, and how redesigned schools can learn from community school models and leverage community connections and integrated student supports to serve the whole child. We've posted the recordings for webinars 1 through 6 on our website, learningpolicyinstitute.org/HS-redesign-series. It's also dropped in the chat, I believe. And we are so heartened to see so many of you going back to rewatch those recordings. This makes me think that we might be doing something right. So now I'm excited to toss this to Jorge Ruiz de Velasco. Jorge is the Deputy Director of the John W. Gardner Center for Youth and Their Communities at the Stanford Graduate School of Education, where he leads the California Learning Collaborative on Alternative Schools. Jorge also supports the Bay Area Regional Technical Assistance Center for Community Schools and supervises the Gardner Center's Youth Data Archive, which supports several research practice partnerships with San Francisco Unified, Fresno Unified, and Sequoia Union High School District and its 8 feeder K-8 school districts. His work focuses on public education law and policy. Jorge holds a PhD in political science and a master's in education policy and administration, both from Stanford University, a JD from the UC Berkeley School of Law, and an AB cum laude in government from Harvard University. That's a lot of school. Well done, Jorge. So welcome, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Charlie, for that. And thank you to the Policy Institute, the Learning Policy Institute, for convening this conversation on a beautiful Thursday. So what we have in front of us is a really great wrap-up story that's going to bring together, I think, uh, courtesy of our friends at UCLA who've worked very close with Anaheim Union School District, that will bring together the 10 features that you've been talking about and on a journey this year. But it's a story of implementation, and as always, in context, it's also a story about how change happens and how sometimes change requires seizing a moment. And in this case, in the Anaheim Union case, the moment that sort of sparked and created the platform for change was the declining enrollment in the school district that fueled a discussion within the district about the need for closed schools and merged schools. And this created what they saw as an opportunity to consolidate schools in the process of redesigning them. So in a lot of ways, you see here a school district that is pivoting in Sean Ginwright's terms from a problem to a possibility thinking. And in this case, they saw the opportunity of having to think about merging schools or closing schools and opening redesigned schools as a way of unmooring the thinking about schooling as rooted in geography and neighborhood and physical structures and buildings, and more rooted in a community of learners and of shared purpose. And this was kind of the driving window through which change happened for and opened the possibility of redesign thinking in Anaheim Union. So we'll talk about the 10 features as you hear the panel discuss, and Marisa Saunders lead them through that. But we'll lift up the context for implementation and adaptation, which varies site to site. We'll lift up the process by which they implemented. And as you'll hear, Anaheim's journey will want to lift up the design, the context, and the process at once. Part of that context in Anaheim is they have about 31,000 students who speak 49 different languages at home. So lots of English learners, lots of newcomer immigrants, and families in the district. 21 high school or middle school campuses from 5 feeder elementary schools in our region. And the story that we're going to hear about in that context is about the opportunity to merge 2 schools that were separately, that previously were separate school, a middle school and a high school, Orange View Junior High and Western High School, into a single 8-12 campus. We started out a little bit with Mike Matsuda, who is the superintendent of Anaheim Union, and this sort of quote from him that illustrates how he's kind of saw this moment of merging as an opportunity to rethink school from top to bottom. But aside from what's highlighted on the screen, I want to lift up 2 things that are really important to the story that you're going to hear about, and that is direction and focus. He talks about that successful redesign requires a direction and focus from the top. And in his case, he wanted to focus redesign on the instructional core and on an insight about creating a greater sense of belonging by students, their families, and teachers in the school site, and a focus on their mental health and social emotional learning. The other thing that you see, the other word that pops out to me about Anaheim here and Mike Matsuda is the word purpose. Um, Driving change requires, in his mind, and you'll see it come from his staff as they talk about their story, purpose. Clarity of purpose, of a purpose-driven education is their North Star, and it is the thing on which they hang their work around coherent redesign. Um, Obviously, the design principles, all 10, are not really to be implemented all of a piece. It's not at once that you do all 10 with equal effort in any given time, nor are they really sequentially done. Rather, um, they the implementation of these design features, as you'll see, requires a process that helps the adults to pursue redesigned goals coherently. And in their case, they draw very heavily on the work of Michael Fullan's coherence framework. Michael Fullan has been very influential in California, both through his new pedagogies for deep learning organization, MPDL, which this district has been involved in as a framework. And also, Michael Fullan has been an advisor to the state of California in the design of its community schools approach, and also in very influential in helping the CDE and the state coordinating entities in Alameda County and at UCLA think about the capacity building strategies for comprehensive school design. All of these have Michael Fullan's fingerprints. For today, what's important to look at as you hear the Anaheim team talk about their work is about um, that's consistent with Michael Fullan's thinking about coherent implementation is an emphasis on creating a deep shared understanding of purpose. You'll hear that from the team. The other one is creating a culture of collaboration. This is where they really lean into distributed leadership, strong communities of practice at the site level that you invite families, educators, and administrators into thinking about how to improve and stay focused on learning and improvement, and a focus on what Michael Fullan calls a focus on building the capacity of the team, particularly at the site level, to deliver on their reform, rather than on focusing on individual contribution or competition. They really focus in Anaheim on building the team at their site to deliver on their shared understanding. And of course, the other one is that we've talked about is focused direction in action. They've focused on the instructional core and on their culturally and responsive community engagement work. Just finally, as a closeout here before we move to the meat of our presentation, about the 10 features and coherent implementation. Peter Senge, who's also been very influential in thinking about how to organize for change in California and in the thinking in many of our school districts, says that the most important thing district leaders can do is help everyone in the system see the system. And so it's hard to see the system and try to keep 10 features in mind, and try to figure out, well, how you're going to do them. Because as I said before, it's not sequential or all at once. So in organizing the work in Anaheim, what we see them do is organize around what we might call 3 organizing pillars. And I won't take these in order, but I'll start, say, with engaging student-centered learning and experiences. This is a real focus on the instructional core as they implement the design features. This pillar incorporates the deep learning curricula, student-centered pedagogy, authentic assessment, which on the right side is our numbers 4, 5, and 6, that's embodied by the 5 C's that you're going to hear about in a minute, the 5 big learning objectives for students. The second organizing pillar in the Anaheim work is safe, inclusive, and culturally responsive learning environments. And this incorporates the features of safe, inclusive school climate, culturally responsive, sustaining teaching, well-prepared teachers, shared decision making, 2, 3, 7, and 10. Don't worry, there's not going to be a final exam on this. I just want to show how they cohered at the idea level the 10 features into these 3 pillars that you're going to hear about a little bit more in a minute. The final one here is positive developmental learning relationships. That's fostering strong relationships, authentic family engagement, and community connection and integrated student support. That's number 1, 8, and 9. Um, and as I say, what's not important to keep these 3 pillars in your head or the 10 features as you hear the story, but really see how, as an implementation driver, they really focused on getting shared understanding of purpose and what they were doing across the system, building culturally and collaboration, a culture of collaboration and adult learning at the sites, and building a culture of teamwork that really brings to life the discretionary effort of the team, of the adults in the building on behalf of students, and leads to supports coherent implementation of the 10 features that you'll hear about in a minute from the panel. At this point, I'm going to stop. I'm going to hand it back to Charlie, who's going to take us through a reflection exercise. And then we're going to hear from Marisa and the panel in Anaheim.
Thank you, Jorge. So you should see in the chat very shortly a link being dropped to this easy retro. For those who have joined us before, this should feel both easy and somewhat retro. We have used this platform several times. It's been very great. And the way that you add an insight or a response, the first question, this bucket is what resonated with you from the research presentation. I'm going to say the emphasis on coherence. You press the little plus button and you press save, and look at that. You've got yourself a nice little response. The second question that we'd love to hear from you is like, what questions and what wonderings remain? What do you still want to learn about? What are you still thinking about? So feel free to drop those in. And then the last is, do you have any connections, aha moments, or ideas that have come out of this webinar series? Now, if this is your first time joining us live, feel free to still put in an aha or a wondering or a connection to your work in there. But especially if you've been here for more than one, or if you've watched a few asynchronously, it would be great to see what's going on. And I should be able to see some responses coming in. Someone has liked one. So whoever liked mine, if you could add your own. I'm just going to keep my screen up and stop talking while we see the responses roll in. For those who know me, they know that me stopping talking is a personal challenge. So here we go. Oh, nice. Oh yeah, I agree. The bite size, all 10 features at once would be incredibly challenging. And you're going to hear in a moment about how the folks in Anaheim picked more than a few, but definitely a subset of the 10 features. The coherence framework. Ooh, that is this question that just rolled in. How does the work involve families who are undergoing such big changes? You really hit on, I think, an exciting and hard part of the work. If you're, building something new, it can be really, really scary, especially if you're consolidating or if you're changing up what folks are used to. I feel like especially our both the Western and the Orange View folks can speak really deeply to how their families have reacted to and come along with, or maybe not come along with, the vision for redesign, because it is a It's a big change. I like that question underneath. That's very similar. I think there's a lot of any sort of change effort requires really good communication and honesty about the fact that it's unclear how it's going to end up. Wow, that's so beautiful. Both of those connections or ahas are really wonderful. Thank you for sharing. We're going to wrap this up in about a minute. So keep adding your questions. This is not, once I stop sharing my screen, you can keep sharing your insights. We're going to keep looking at the chat and everyone will have access to the Easy Retro now and forevermore. So your insights and wonderings and connections will remain. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right, and I'll toss it to you, Marisa. This is Marisa Saunders, by the way. Sorry, I forgot I have to do a whole introduction of Marisa. Marisa is at the UCLA Center for Community Schools. She is a wizard on all things community schools. I'm not reading her bio right now, and I should, but I cannot find it. So instead, I'm just going to say, Marisa, take it away.
Well, thank you for that intro, Charlie. Thanks. I now have the pleasure of introducing the team from the Anaheim Union High School District. These are the folks who are currently leading the effort to redesign their school, as Jorge shared, by really taking advantage of this school merger, this moment in time. And their work is guided by a coherent community schools implementation strategy and by highlighting many of the design features we've explored throughout this webinar series. So we are joined this afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining us from, by Amanda Bean. So Amanda Bean is the director of the Career Preparedness Systems Framework implementation in the district, where she leads efforts to align academic and career pathways that empower students to find their purpose. She is a two-time award recipient, having been named Curriculum and Instruction Administrator of the Year and Central Office Administrator of the Year. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us today. Next, we're joined by Shamila Castro. Shamila is a Spanish teacher, community schools teacher lead, and serves as the World Languages Department Chair at Western High School. Throughout her 27-year career teaching Spanish, she has held multiple leadership positions and has served as an induction mentor while remaining primarily focused on classroom teacher. Thank you so much, Shamila, for joining us today after a long day of teaching. Now I'd like to introduce Bindi Crawford. She's the principal of Orange View Junior High School in the district. Bindi is a passionate educator and experienced school leader with a background in school counseling. With more than a decade of experience in site administration, Bindi is known for her strength in collaborative leadership with teachers and community leaders. Her work in school redesign and student-centered leadership has been recognized across the region. She's been recognized as the 2025 Junior Principal of the Year in the district and the Outstanding Administrator for 4th District PTSA in 2024. Thank you, Bindi, for joining us. And last, I'd like to introduce Ann Rice. Ann has spent 25 years as a science educator and teacher leader. She currently serves as the instructional coach at Orange View Junior High School, and she serves as a member of the Orange View Western Redesign team. Thank you, Ann, for joining us. And before I launch into my questions, not only do I want to thank you all again for joining us, but really appreciate that together we'll be capturing a vertical slice perspective by understanding what the work looks like from where you sit. from inside the classroom all the way to the district. So with that, I'd like to pose my first question to Amanda. And we already got a little bit of a taste of what the merger is about from Jorge, but if you could provide us with the history behind the school merger and how that merger inspired a 2-year design process, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. So as Jorge mentioned, our district has been significantly impacted with the effects of declining enrollment. Over the last several years, we've lost probably 4,000 students. And so, we had to start taking a look at like, what might we do about that? And so we convened this efficiency committee that was made up of representatives from a few different schools and district staff to look at what were the options, what were the possibilities. And ultimately, our board made the decision to consolidate 2 schools, Western and Orangeview, into 1 school, a 712 school. And the year of that efficiency committee and the board decision were really focused on making that decision, and then the subsequent grieving process that took place, especially with the Orangeview staff who had been, it was pretty veteran staff. Many of the staff had been there 15, 20 years. And so there's this real sense of loss of like our school, our identity. And it just took some time to work through that. And through the leadership of Bindi and the team here, the staff really has overcome a lot of that to see what you see today. Through that process, the staff and community had many questions about how was this going to work? There's safety concerns. A lot of the parents of the 7th graders were like, what do you mean my kid's going to go to school with a 17-year-old? Like, what about the bathroom? What about the locker room? And all sorts of questions like that. And so we then convened the consolidation committee, where we had representatives from both campuses, district, community, parents, students, and so on. And we really worked through topics such as like, what's the bell schedule going to look like? And what will safety look like? And what will athletics look like? And what will serving lunch look like? And all of the like just day-to-day operations of a school. And so in that process, though, especially in the bell schedule conversations, we realized we had a really great opportunity to not just consolidate a school, but leverage it as an opportunity to rethink about how we were doing school for students. Our district really has a framework that we focus on called the Career Preparedness Systems Framework, which is 3 drivers, 21st century skills, technical skills, and the elevation of voice and purpose. And so we really felt like this was a perfect way to put those drivers to action and work through this process. And so this whole last year has been spent with a redesigned team of teachers. This is completely teacher driven, who have been charged with dreaming big as we take this journey and think about how can we do school at Western Orangeview, the new Western Orangeview. How could we lean into those drivers of CPSF and then primarily focus helping the students and staff uncover and revitalize their voice and purpose. And so I want to emphasize that everything that's being planned for the upcoming launch of Western and Orangeview has been staff and community driven. And really my role has just been to help them figure that out and make it happen.
Thank you, Amanda, and really appreciate you lifting the emotional piece here. Like, what the community was experiencing emotionally, and lifting this opportunity to rethink how you are doing schools. Thank you again. So my next question is to Bindi, the principal. So as you began this redesign journey that Amanda just described, what strategies were used to establish the shared priorities, what you were going to focus on? Or I think you all use the language of promising practices for the new merged school. And in particular, can you tell us about the role the steering committee played and the strategies used by the steering committee?
So I think Amanda summed it up perfectly to get us to where we began this year. But I do think it's important to note that really we took the decision that was made by the board and we felt like we had a loss of our campus. And so even 2 years ago at the start, when the board made the decision to combine our two campuses, language like consolidation or merger would be used. And we began utilizing some of the tools that we have in community schools. And right after the board meeting, we had community voice circles with our staff. And like I said, I have a very veteran, experienced staff that just wants to get things done. And the idea of a community voice circle for some of them was something that they didn't need or want, and some needed that space. And so what was clear at that point was that we had people in many different places. And as the committees started that year one, we found a lot of intersectionality between worries from the community holding town halls held by community schools team. Ms. Castro, who's on our meeting today, was there for many of them and drove and designed many of them. But we wanted to get information from our community, from our staff, from our students as to what they wanted in our new merged school in the beginning. And very quickly, as we became through that committee structure, we realized that we wanted to do more. The decision may have been made for us on what was going to happen, but we wanted to drive what happened to us and what we did. And so really we got partnered up with Barnett Berry and David Brazier, which I think has been wonderful in our experience as far as redesign. And we launched to begin this last summer with the article for the 10 features of redesign for school success. And our team with a bunch of teacher leaders came together and we almost unanimously agreed that we wanted to root our work on relationships with our kids. And that really began the work that we did to move forward and what strategies we used to establish what we would now call our promising practices. We visited different schools. And we would go to schools with similar socioeconomic status as our school, similar demographics. And we even took a field trip all the way up to San Francisco area to visit Hillsdale High School. And that's, I think, where most of us got really inspired off of parts of what Hillsdale's does, and then integrate that to some of the ideas and concepts that here we already are launching and redesigning through our district initiatives. And so with that, we were given 2 small groups. We call it the Small Redesign Committee, where a team of teachers had a period off to do a lot of the work that we do. And it gained into a larger redesign committee that met often. The smaller redesign committees met every day, and the larger groups met at least once a month, if not more often. And we felt that we needed to reimagine not only the student experience, but the teacher experience as well. For anyone that's in the classroom after pandemic, we all know the kids are different. The experiences are different. So in order to make our community and our jobs more sustainable, we not only needed to redesign the student experience, but the staff experience as well. And so I've really relied a lot on our redesign committee, and I've been very proud of the work that they've done. And what they've done is create a feedback loop. They go back out to their staff, students. We get student voice at both campuses. We have what's called an RSVP, which is a student group of people that goes and gets student-led to get student voices at both campuses. And that's driven some of our work as well. And then our redesign committee helped establish a vision that through very thick decisions and through difficult times has guided us to the work that we've done to make sure we stay true to what we set out to do. Change is hard. And so even as we create our most recent thing, which is our master schedule to implement our promising practices, seeing it come from theory to reality has been the latest big step for our staff and community, as well as our students. And I feel like a clear vision has helped guide us through that, as well as really strong communication. So some of the things were to integrate, even though we're separated campuses now, we've done a lot of practices to make it feel like we're together as much as we can.
Thank you, Bindi. And your response is inspiring this next question that I'd like to direct to Shamila. So From your perspective, Shamila, as a community schools teacher lead, how do these promising practices and structures that Bindi just described reflect the community schools approach? And can you share some examples of how community-rooted practices have helped build that trust and belonging at Western? And what's the plan for expanding these practices in the new school?
Yes, hello everyone. So let's start with trust. I think that my position, community schools teacher lead, and Anne's position as the 5Cs coach, right, require us to be in the classroom. So I think we gain trust from the staff by just being a classroom teacher. So I'm part-time community schools teacher lead, but I'm also experiencing and implementing everything that we are preaching, right, that we need to do to get better as a school. And so it gives us a lot of more credibility with our staff. So some of the promising practices that we prioritize really are deeply aligned with our 4 pillars of community schools. One of them, for example, is the advisory period.
I got you. Okay.
So one of them is the advisory period, which serves as a form of integrated student support. As you've heard, community schools is very much data driven. And so we get a lot of our data, our street data, from our community voice circles. And so we did community voice circles with families and students, and we do have support in place to support students right now. We have after school, before school tutoring, we have Saturday Academy, but the students were not coming. And so when we did the community voice circles, we realized why. We have students that have sports after school, they have responsibilities like taking care of siblings, they have part-time and some full-time jobs. We have students that are ELs that are working full-time jobs and they're actually paying rent. And so this is why they're not coming. And so having this advisory period, right, allows students a structured time during the school day for academic support and mentorship. And, and it directly responds to those needs. So they don't have to come after school anymore. They're going to be able to be supported during the school day. Advisory also strengthens family and community engagement, which is another strong pillar for community schools. During advisory, we have an adult that is going to be the bridge between home and school. And this is going to create a stronger sense of belonging and partnership between the families. And this is what we're looking for. And I think one of the most important pillars of community schools for me is the collaborative leadership. And I think we've had to learn how to do that. Teachers to lead, to make decisions, what? So now it took a while for us to get used to it. I would say 2 years almost. But we're there, right? And the entire process has truly been, like Amanda said, a shared effort among teachers, administrators, and our community schools team. It's taken time. I'm not going to say it was easy, right? But it took intentional effort to create that trust needed for true collaboration. And like I said, I feel like after 2 years, we've made great progress in that area. And I think we've learned to have hard conversations, to be transparent, and to put the students' needs, in the front, above all, right? So no matter what the decisions were, we knew that the students led those decisions. And so as we move forward, I know that we have a lot of work to still do. As we plan for next year, when are we going to have those meetings for the redesigned? How are we going to continue to build that infrastructure to bring more educators into the collaborative leadership, right? It's not going to be just the redesign team. We want department chairs to be part of this team. We want other teachers to come in and help us lead the effort.
Thank you, Shamila. And thanks for lifting how trust and belonging is really essential to weather change. I'm going to pick up on this thread of teacher leadership, and I'd love to ask you, Anne, what teacher leadership looks like in moments of transition, right? I mean, this is what you do all the time, but this is a unique period of time. And how are you supporting your colleagues to step into leadership roles during this transition time?
Thank you for that question. And hi, everybody. Forgive me for my audio slip up a few minutes ago, Shamila, during your beautiful moment. My custodian came into my classroom to do a little cleaning. So anyway, trust is one of the things that I think Shamila hit right on the nose, because she and I exist in this shared world where, as teacher leaders, we're sort of split between two worlds. We live in teacher world and leader world. And in teacher world, we're largely in control of the choices we make and what we do and what happens. But in leader world, not so much. And so when I'm not careful, I quickly can feel this dual role becoming overwhelming, which could lead to frustration or anxiety or even anger. And that's someone who's willingly stepping in to this redesigned situation. So if I feel that, my colleagues may be feeling those feelings too. And those feelings are normal in times of change. So to me, it's very important to acknowledge them in both myself and my staff, because I'm in many ways a caretaker of my colleagues as we go through this. So we acknowledge them, but we also have to see them as temporary and continue to move forward. So what I've found myself doing in all of this is referring back to the pandemic, which is sort of my reference point for moving through a difficult thing that you don't have complete control over, but you have to move, you have to go. So that time forced us to embrace flexibility and make progress toward objectives that we knew we wanted, even though it felt like the world was shifting underneath our feet. And there were some good things that came out of it, even with all of that. So I like to try to remind my colleagues of how innovative we were during that time and the camaraderie that was born throughout that time, as we realized our survival was based on sharing best practices between each other. Not to sugarcoat the chaos of that time at all. I would never want to teach from my closet for 15 months in my computer again. But just to say, you know, hey, you guys, when we all stepped up, we did amazing things against the odds, and it didn't destroy us. And we did it with the tools that we had. So imagine now what kinds of things we could do when the odds are on our side, when research and experience are on our side, and we can choose the challenges and we can choose the path we take through them. I mean, our educators contain incredible power. And I feel like my role here is to just help them channel that power while caring for themselves so that they don't go insane.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to go back to you, Bindi. This is something that was lifted in that easy retro, but as principal of one of the schools, how are you approaching this transition, especially when it comes to bringing in and supporting students, family, and community members across two school communities? And some folks have spoken to this already. And really curious, I know you have a background in counseling. How does that inform your approach to sharing power and distributing leadership opportunities for all?
That's a loaded question there, Marissa. All right. So, I mean, I think if you're on this webinar, you've already heard from Shamila and Amanda, and this is just a tip of the iceberg of the leadership and support that exists not only at Orangeview and Western, but from the district office. When we truly said, when they said, hey, dream big and have this be teacher led, they've been there to tell us like, hey, play within these lines and stuff, but the decisions have all been ours. And it's really been my role. I likened it at a staff meeting recently. I feel like we're the Brady Bunch, where one family is moving in and like we each have kids, and both Mrs. Moreno over at Western and I are bringing our kids together, and each family has a different culture. But we're moving into the other parent's house, and it's our job to create a new culture. And we know everything we know, and we have both of our campuses have deep rooted histories and culture and traditions, but we need to create something new. And so that's hard, right? But what you see in Ann Rice and Shamila Castro, and if you multiply that by, I want to say 10, that creates our greater redesign committee. We've literally cherry picked some of the best educators and staff leaders and community school coordinators on classified staff and put them all in a room. And while we did have to learn how to work together and communicate in a common language, I've been blessed to be with amazing people who are inspirational and are solution oriented. So my job's been easy, right? Comparatively to the things that we're doing in redesign. If you look at the fact that school hasn't changed in many decades or over a century, and that the traditional school system is made to create factory workers, and that's not the output that we want in AUHSD or through redesign, that's really the harder work. As far as the parents go and the leadership of it, when I have a team as strong as this that integrates community schools and community voice circles and student voice, we heard loud and clear from our students what they wanted and what they envisioned. And we used that when we made some of our decisions for redesign. And so we had, between the town halls and the student groups that we had at both campuses and our teacher leaderships that had a feedback loop with the rest of staff, it's really just been the work that it takes to calibrate both of our campuses. So I always sometimes have said, we're on the same roller coaster. We're just going through the highs and lows at different points, depending on what each campus is going through. And it's with this teacher leadership and with our community and parents that have been open to having discussions and sharing what their concerns and worries and excitement is, that we've created something pretty magical. And I think, to go back to what Anne said, in our district, I think you two ladies will laugh, we always hear systems, not silos, right? But if you think about it, a teacher many years ago, or not in Anaheim Union High School District, could easily go from their car to their classroom and classroom to their car and not ever talk to anybody. And the idea here is that we need to break that down, not only for the survival and the elevation of teachers in general to work together and be collaborative, but also for making sure that redesign coexists and making sure that our promising practices of cross-curricular assignments, cross-curricular projects, teaching in a team, and we collaborate and talk about students together. I think all of that goes. And I think I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to be a counselor, because I got to see school from a different angle than a classroom. And I really feel that my ability to listen and my ability to work through groups of people and then take the best of each part of that has really helped me lead in this process. But really, it goes back down to I've been blessed to be able to be given the position to lead at Orangeview. And then I've been blessed to be able to work with the leaders at Western. And I'm very grateful of that. And that is not forgotten on me.
Oh, thank you, Bindi. And I'm certain that none of this has been easy, but I like that you framed it as such. I also appreciated your Brady Bunch analogy. So I want to go back to the classroom, and Anne, I'm really curious. Jorge mentioned the 5 C's, and I would love to know how the 5 C's have shaped your instructional leadership and how they might be guiding your work as you merge these two distinct school cultures.
All right, well, I'm the 5Cs coach, so you got the right person. All right, everybody that's listening, you've been listening for almost an hour. I know you're a little antsy, probably wiggle your fingers. You're gonna count with me. Here we go. So our 5Cs in Anaheim are deeply rooted at the base of all we do, whether you're a teacher, a counselor, everyone on campus, even the students, they know the 5Cs. So having them, I think it's a great way for us to constantly remind ourselves of the skills that we all know are important, but we sometimes forget to treat with intention. They could very easily become afterthoughts of like, well, I hope the kids got some creativity in that assignment. But when you know them going in and you design them in, it works. And it works with redesign and it works with our leadership as well. So first, as a member of the redesign team, we've learned that good collaboration, there's your first one, is shaped by trust. And you'll notice that trust is a recurring theme because we don't know exactly where we're going or what will happen, but we're trusting that it will work. We have good listening skills. We have to, or we won't understand where everyone's coming from. So that brings us into our second C, communication. And we share a vision. So all of that leads us to finding new problems and new challenges we have to solve. And that brings in our third C, which is critical thinking. And our fourth C, creativity. A great example of that is we had to build a new bell schedule from scratch, really, because we had different needs at the junior high and high school. We knew we were going to have to go to some kind of block, but it couldn't be a block that looked like anything else happening in our district because we have promising practices that are not happening anywhere else, like advisory and teaching teams. So we had to be so creative in that and to think critically through problems and look for it was to watch that process now, having come through it, it was a gnarly process, but what an amazing result we got. And then the final C, which in our district kind of gets tossed back and forth. It's sometimes called citizenship or character, and sometimes it's called compassion, but you can see why those get conflated, which is also a C. That has been essential. We are asking for new things, difficult things from ourselves, but more importantly from our colleagues and even our families and students. We're asking them to have some faith and trust that these things will pay off. This is a long game. It's not, we're going to fix it and start it in August and it's all going to be great right away and you'll love it. So I think that compassion is what allows us to remember at our core that these are human beings. You know, we can have pretty philosophies all day long, but these are humans and these are lives both behind the teacher's desk as well as in front of it. And the compassion is what will sustain us through the long years ahead as we refine this and hopefully build a better system that will outlast any one of us as individuals in our educational career.
Oh, thank you, Anne. I would love to ask the same question of you, Shamila. How do you know, as the community school teacher lead, how do you know that you're responding to the needs of your colleagues right now during this time of transition? And what will this look like moving forward?
Well, let me just start by saying that if there's something I learned about this process is that teachers are very emotional beings, right? And it's hard. Change is very hard. And some of the things I learned is how to best communicate. Communication is key to any redesign process. And there's two things that I go by. One, always assume best intentions. And two, I think Bindi is great at this, and she promoted this throughout the whole redesign. We're open to hearing your problems, but please come to the table with solutions. We want to hear your solutions, right? And so I agree with Anne in that, sorry, can you come back later? Sorry, now it's my turn for the custodian to come in, sorry. So
I'm laughing so hard right now.
So I think I have to agree with Anne in the compassion part, right? At the heart of all the instructional and structural decisions, there's people behind that, right? And as a redesign team, we made it a priority to listen deeply and respond with compassion. We've learned that validating the feelings and concerns of our colleagues is essential. I don't know how many times we had to pivot meetings, to have meetings, more meetings with specific groups, right? To hear how they were feeling and, what their needs were and how we could work together to make it work, to come to some kind of middle ground, right? And so everybody processes change differently. And acknowledging that has helped us build and trust and create a more supportive transition process. And like Bindi said before, we've had to have honest conversations about the redesign and how it impacts our roles, how our roles are going to change. And it's not easy, right? We've had moments of discomfort and lots of disagreements. But that always leads to spaces of more growth. And so what has allowed us to move forward is that shared understanding of our larger vision and a willingness to compromise when it's needed. And putting, again, the students in the center of all this, right? We're doing this for the students and our community and what is best for them.
Thank you, Shamila. And clearly, trust relationships is a through line here. I'd like to ask one more question to Amanda, going back to district. Somebody mentioned the master schedule, right? So what role has the master schedule played in the structure of this redesign? And where have you been successful in creating change around these big structures, like the master schedule?
So I'm going to answer that question in reverse and talk about how redesign has played a role in building the master schedule. There's this article that's several years old from the National Association of Secondary School Principals, and it talks about how master schedule is a culture indicator on a campus. And the article starts by saying the master schedule is to a school what grading policies are to teachers in classrooms. It reveals the true beliefs, attitudes, values, and priorities of the school. The school master schedule is like looking at an MRI of the inner workings of a school. It's the window to the soul of the school. So when we talk about how has redesign affected that process, it really, we really had to keep the promising practices rooted at the heart of the work that we were doing. And so all of my colleagues have mentioned at how hard it has gotten at times. And Bindi even mentioned that when the staff started to see the promising practices come to life in the master schedule, there was a lot of angst and there was a lot of like, oh, ooh, I mean, wow, I have to change something I've been teaching for all these years. Oh, wait, I'm a junior high teacher and I have to teach high school classes. And oh, wait, I'm a high school teacher and I have to teach junior high classes. And there was a lot of just anxiety around the change, right? And so really though, we have been able to stay grounded in the promising practices, keep, centering ourselves on those. There was a couple of times even where it was like, oh, maybe this is too much change. Maybe we should phase in some of the promising practices, or maybe we should, think about it differently. And every time we started to talk through that, we got back to the heart of like, no, like this is the right thing to do. This is what we want to do. We don't really think we can have one without the other. And it really just forced us to keep working with the staff through the anxiety, through the challenges we were facing. In addition to the promising practices, our district has a lot of program options for students and the lines that we ask the school to live in. So things like common release periods, like Shamila and Anne as teacher leader coaches, we have systems within our district that support those positions, and there's common things that they need to have. We have embedded dual enrollment in our schools. We have Western has a really strong athletics program that we had to try to fit into this whole structure. And so really, honoring those things as well as the redesign practices, was a great challenge. But again, I have had the privilege of watching this team and supporting this team through that, and really watching the redesign team support their colleagues through the process, right? And to really say like, hey, we have to think about our teaching preps differently, our master schedule differently. And what we've been able to accomplish is common conference periods for our teaching teams, common conferences for our course alike teams, all the priority periods off for our released people, and all of the programming for kids. And that was through like careful work of the master schedule team, our counseling team, our assistant principals who have been working on that. I have watched the staff really grapple with really hard questions. I've watched them grieve the loss of a school. I've watched them grieve the loss of coveted preps and the way they thought things should be versus the way we wanted them to be. And they did that all in favor of dreaming bigger, right? Dreaming bigger through these priorities and thinking through like, what is it that we really want for our community and for our students? So we still have a lot of work to do, right? All we've gotten to the place of now is like, we have a schedule, we know it's working, we have a commitment to the priorities, the redesign principles. The master schedule was really to help set the conditions to make the next step possible. And so we're really excited for that and can't wait to see what's next year.
Wow. Thank you, Amanda. And thank you for these responses that really lift up the hard work and how you manage to keep relationships and people at the center while grappling with these big ideas. I have one more question, just that we'll do a quick whip around, a 20-second soundbite. What gives you hope about this moment? And what do you want to hold on to as you all move into the next chapter together? And I will start with Shamila.
I'm looking forward to that integrated professional development for our teachers and working with our teachers in developing systems when we learn to collaborate together. Right now, I think pretty much half of our staff works in silos. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for the deeper learning that's going to create, for the stronger curriculum that teachers are going to develop, and the support system that they're going to have to be able to have that integrated collaboration during the school day.
Thank you, Shamila. Anne.
I am hopeful that given the right amount of time, which we never feel we have enough of, time and support, I'm hopeful that our students, our parents, and our teachers will come to see themselves as active builders and not passive participants in reshaping what education can be for everybody. I hope we maintain our optimism and our momentum in this because it is going to be a long game and it will not be easy. We will need patience, but I believe it will be worthwhile.
Thank you, Anne. Bindi.
I'm excited to create something new. And I think figuring out, I love puzzles, but when this puzzle is going to result in a 3D whole child that has a greater school experience than what their parents had or their siblings had, one that creates a smaller community within a larger campus, and one that creates a system that is sustainable, that is truly teacher-led, that is sustainable through any administrative change or any teacher leader change, where we have systems that are set up and it can sustain throughout that process, just like how the factory model has sustained over 100 years. That's exciting work to me.
Thank you so much, Bindi. Amanda. Hope.
I really am excited and hopeful for the teacher leadership, right? I think Shamila kind of mentioned like, there was times that they struggled with like, wait, we get to decide, wait, like really, we get to do it, right? And so we see that across our campuses, and there's always the district they are coming in to tell us what to do, right? And so I'm really hopeful that this is a model to show our sites that like we value your voice, we value what you bring to the table as a staff, as a community, because we know as a district we're probably going to have to do this again with another set of schools, and so we really want to just hopeful that everyone can see that like you have the power to make it what you want it to be.
Thank you so much. So we're going to turn now to questions that have been posed by participants, and anybody could answer these questions. I want to start with this question about turnover. So given that turnover and change is endemic to schools and districts, I wonder how these changes will be maintained and sustained over time. And anyone can respond to that.
Listen to all that quiet. All right. So the sustaining of our change over time is a work in progress, because one of our metaphors, we all heard this a lot of times, is we're trying to build this plane as we fly it, right? So the way I see it, sustaining takes two parts. There's practical sustenance and there's emotional sustenance. Practical sustenance is observing the structures we've put in place with a lot of faith, not knowing how they will work out, and then constantly assessing them, collecting data, looking for feedback, listening, tweaking them, but being patient enough to see if they work before you hurriedly make a change. You don't want a knee-jerk reaction, right? We want to say, well, did we really ride that out? So that practical sustenance requires understanding of the magnitude of what we're trying to do to turn around a system that has been chugging slowly along on its own momentum for a century, like Bindi said, making little factory complacent workers. The emotional sustenance is the part where I've said to David Brazier, one of our advisors, I've said, what needs to come with all this? We need like an on-site therapist, like an on-site coach or counselor. But I don't mean it as a joke. I mean, really, like we need, famous athletes and people, they have life coaches who give them encouragement and teach them how to view things in the right lens and how to view failure not as a negative commentary on their skills, but as a chance for growth or to re-examine. We need that. We need that now for 120 staff members who are going to feel like banging their head at some point in next year. They're going to be like, why did we try? This is crazy. And we need someone to be like, yes, it feels crazy. You're right. Now, how will you go back tomorrow and work on things in a world that feels crazy? And how do you view that as temporary? And how do you deal with it? So those pieces of sustenance are part of the puzzle we are trying to figure out. I feel incredibly grateful and excited to be working with colleagues who have so many different strengths. We have a woman on Redesigned who is the most amazing affirmer. She can find in anyone something they are doing well at any moment. We have someone who is like the logical brain. They look at something and they go, well, move that here, move this here, move that there, turn that around, and it works. And nobody else could see it but her. So like we have somebody everywhere. And I'm starting to see in this what I hope our staff as a whole will begin to see, that we are stronger as a whole. We are a greater sum together than the sum of our parts, that together we are way more valuable. I can't wait to see what this looks like in 5 years.
Oh, either can we. I think we have time for one more question. The question is, as you merge not only communities, but curricula, how is the district supporting teachers to design instruction that is both rigorous and deeply connected to students' lived experiences? What existing structures and instructional practices have helped with this transition? That's a big question. I think you've touched on it in your earlier responses. Anybody want to take that?
I can maybe start it and then maybe have someone else finish it. When one of the things I'm already seeing that I'm most excited about is you often hear this rhetoric of kids coming into junior high and you're like, you'll hear, what did they learn in elementary school, right? How they don't have the skills they need. And then you'll hear it again in high school. Sometimes you'll hear high school teachers or staff or say, these kids are not coming in with the skills they need. And what happens is, as much as we talk about vertical alignment, specifically from junior high to high school, we do get caught in the day-to-day lesson planning and the things that we have on campus, and it's difficult to find time to carve that out. And so when you pair that with some of the initiatives for civic engagement, the community schools approach to the classroom instruction, first best instruction, and 5 C's, as well as our LMS, which integrates AI reflections and AI responses for teachers to have a soon-to-be quicker understanding of what kids learned. And you put all of us together, I think the vertical alignment between the curriculum of what they learn in 7th and 8th grade is going to be far more aligned to what they learn in the later grades. So for example, in history, they take world history in our district in 7th grade, and they take it again in 10th grade. And now that I feel like our teams that will be together, that alignment and that content and curriculum and those projects will build upon each other to create a greater sense of understanding, perspective, understanding of the humanities than what we currently have as a separated campus.
Does anybody
think-
want to follow? Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say too, in our district, we have a really strong capstone program at each site, and where students and staff are engaging in performance task assessments throughout every class, and students are compiling a portfolio demonstrating their learning of the 5 C's and other things at the school. And so I think the opportunity to, create a 7-12 capstone program and do cross-curricular work between the teaching teams and integrate themes into the houses will create more relevant instruction for the students as well, and just create that cohesiveness that we're asking about.
Thank you so much. I think we are at time, but before I let you all go, I want to thank you again for inspiring us, for sharing your experiences with us, your expertise, and your compassion and humanity as you continue on this redesign journey. Thank you again. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Cheryl.
Thank you. So thanks to everybody. We're so excited that you spent time with us today for this final webinar in our Reimagining Education series. We appreciate that some of you have joined us for several sessions of this 7-part experience. I want to kind of double down on what Marisa just said. Thank you to Jorge for framing our session and to Marisa for moderating a wonderful panel. There's such expertise and insight here that's been presented by Amanda, Shamila, Bindi, and Anne. It's really important to learn about the structures and school models and the approach to redesigning, but this has been a very special experience thinking about how a community schools approach integrates with the 10 features for redesign and really in a very coherent and intentional way moves towards transformative experiences for school. Some of you may have had the experience where you visited a school or you've learned about a practice and you're like, yes, but how do I get from A to Z? How do we move through to that model? And it's challenging. And so today we had an opportunity to listen to this conversation that hopefully gave you a view of the how and the why, and that it might inspire you and guide you in your work. I'm going to take us back a little bit to where we started in November. We talked a bit about the industrial model, which you've heard about today, and the real need, the urgency to change those systems to redesign schools that work better for students. Linda Darling-Hammond, the founder of LPI, who also authored the publication Redesigning High School, presented us the 10 features and provided lessons from a small school, East Palo Alto Academy, and also Hillsdale, that was mentioned today as a site that Anaheim had an opportunity to visit. They restructured their school into small learning communities. In our second session, my colleague and co-author of the high school redesign, Laura Hernandez, summarized our research on relationship-based schooling and thought with a group of educators about the structures and practices that are implemented in order to improve academic and social learning. And she also was joined by school leaders that gave us highlights around restorative justice practices, student-led conferences, and integrated academic support for learners. In our third session, we were joined by Zaretta Hammond, who brilliantly summarized how the science of learning and development also connects with culturally engaging and sustaining pedagogy. And she was joined by school leaders that really helped us see the ways in which building students' cognitive capabilities really develops identity simultaneously. Charlie, who kicked us off today in February, she grounded us in the research on authentic curriculum and assessment, and she was joined by leaders who had done transformation and who had facilitated transformation to bring about really intentional strategies for designing well-scaffolded experiences around authentic inquiry. Session 5 was kicked off with Karen Mapp, a longtime educator in the community, kind of around community engaged work, and she presented a dual capacity framework for community engagement and was followed by a panel of school designers, a community organizer, and a recent alum, a student who had redesigned a school context in Southern California. Last month, our webinar was around preparing educators and ensuring essential supports for teachers. And so Maria grounded us again on sole principles for effective teacher and leadership preparation in that session. And our panel was made up by two of the leading researchers in this area and also a practitioner who has expertise on resource and structures. I saw a number of things coming up in today's panel about the master schedule. I think Anne dropped that in the link, but we know that some of this is really technical work. And so really hoping to provide the resources that allow you to see how do we build the structures for that design. So we've been on this long journey. And as Charlie said at the start, we hope you'll, over the course of the next few weeks and months, have time to return to some of the supports and resources that we've provided. But the Center for School and System Redesign will continue to build out our website with research briefs, with tools, with guides that support redesign. We plan to host a virtual and also an in-person convenings, bringing together some school transformation leaders as well as policymakers. In the summer, we'll launch our newsletter. So that will give us an opportunity to highlight some of these great practices, to present other learning supports and new publications that come out in the field. So do please sign up to be in touch. As a hub for this work, we want to really share resources, connect and coordinate to school facilitators and folks doing technical assistance in this area. And Anne's comment earlier about just the need for maybe an on-site therapist, I really, in many cases, right, this does require a school change facilitator. And so we have a great teacher leadership, but there are ways in which someone managing and supporting the school change process is a really critical resource. So thinking together how that could happen with existing resources in the school site. I just want to highlight the fact that there has been urgency about doing school differently for some time. We know that 70% of secondary students feel that their schools are uncaring. They and their families also feel like more needs to change than to stay the same about schools. And right now, things are more precarious, right, in our educational system. We know students and our families are more vulnerable than ever. We know there are declines in student enrollment, which is in some ways what sparked this redesign effort. And we know that the resources are decreasing, right? Enrollment is decreasing, resources are decreasing, but we also might use this moment of disruption, not unlike what we learned through some of the flexibilities and innovations that occurred during COVID. We have to use this moment of disruption to really recreate and redesign and really reimagine the purpose and the structures of schooling. And so we're excited to do that work alongside you. And we are grateful, as we have named, for you attending this series and this session today and hopefully others. But the resources are there for you to return to. But we look forward to engaging in the collective work of just transforming schools, systems, and lives. Thanks so much for attending, and please feel free to reach out and be in touch with the center. Thank you all.